So I don't know what your fall has been like. Ours has been very busy, very hectic. We knew this was coming. It still kind of caught us by surprise. We have 4 kids in 4 schools. We have sports. It's just kind of a crazy season in life, and I'm really glad that baseball is done for right now, so there's a little bit of like an exhale, but it's been a crazy fall. And one of the ways I've learned that we sort of cope with this as a family is that we eat more desserts. Which yeah, I mean, I think that it works for me. I'm pretty happy about it. I mean, I know it's, maybe not the best, but there's worse ways to self-medicate, right? And so we've been on kind of a dessert bender. It feels like every other night we're like making cookies or brownies or cakes, and there were some birthday cakes, but we didn't need a reason to make the cakes. We were gonna make the cakes, like we're just enjoying some desserts, right? And I know it's not good for me, but it's good for me. I'm enjoying this. It's been really great. But I got to tell you that eating all of these desserts, it's really not the eating them that's the problem that keeps me up at night. The problem is that when I get to the end of the dessert, I'm faced with an ethical dilemma. And it's not what we should make next. Like that I can figure out. There's an ethical, moral conundrum that I'm faced as we come to the end of a dessert, which is this. I love my children, but do I love them enough to leave the last of the brownies? See, that's a question, isn't it? I love my children, but I love cake. And do I really love my children enough that I'm gonna leave enough of the cake for them to share? Or, counterpoint, I could eat all that's left so that they don't fight over it. See, that makes sense, right? I mean, right, these are the games that you kind of play. And so I see us coming to the end of the cookies or the brownies or whatever it is, and I'm like, okay, there's a dilemma here. Like, how much do I really love my kids? Enough to leave them some, or should I just take it all myself? And see, this is the moral quandary that I find myself in. Some of you are like, what a terrible dad. You're the same way, right? Like we all have our thing, right? Like we all do these mental calculations, whether we realize it or not. Like we all have this cost-benefit analysis that we do. Maybe it's not in sharing your dessert, but maybe it's like whether or not you'll do the dishes, or whether you'll let somebody who seems to be in a hurry cut in the line at Costco, or when you see somebody who has to work late at the office and you're deciding, like, should I help them so they can get home sooner, but I could leave now, right? So we do this sort of calculation, this cost-benefit analysis to decide whether doing the right thing, whether loving that person, caring for that person, putting that other person ahead of ourselves, if it's actually worth it to us. Because we kind of want a kickback, don't we? Little something for us, right? See, if I leave the dessert for my kids, what's in it for me? Like, I'm not even gonna get a thank you. Like, unless I point it out to them, oh, by the way, guys, I left the cake so that you could have some, in which case they will begrudgingly go, thanks, Dad. Like, is that worth it to me? No, it's not. What about just enjoying the cake? Is that worth it to me? Probably not, right? Like, I'd rather just enjoy the cake myself. And see, even in the relationships that are the deepest, even with those people that we love the most, oftentimes love can become transactional. It can take on a conditional flavor to it, where it's like, I want something in return, and I sort of expect that. I'm gonna love you, but what's in it for me? And there's something inside of us that expects life and love to be fair. It should be equal. Right? It should work out for both of us. This should be reasonable, risk-free, right? I should love you, and you should love me in return. I'll scratch your back, you should scratch mine. And so long as I love you to the extent you love me, it's safe. Because I don't come out on the short end of the bargain. I've loved you and you've loved me and we're equal. It's all good. No danger, no risk, no hurt. Right now we're in the series talking about love, and not so much romantic love, but just talking about love for people, for the world in general, love the way that God loves. Because there seems to be so little love in the world right now. And one of the ways that we limit love is when we do these types of inner calculations, when we do this type of analysis, when we subconsciously or consciously, we think, okay, I could help this person, but what if I do? Like, what if I help them and they don't help me back? What if I help them and they take advantage of me? What if I love them? What if I care for them and then they don't treat me in the same way? And so we limit the way that we love because we want to make sure that we're not the ones left high and dry. But see, our hearts were not created to love this way. Our hearts actually defy these calculations all of the time. And this is why we fall in love with people who actually don't love us very well. And we do love people even when they hurt us, even when it would make sense that we shouldn't. But our hearts defy that type of calculation. Our hearts were created for a reckless, unconditional love. This is the kind of love that not only were we created for, but that we are longing for, that we are looking for. We are looking for love without conditions. Because without that type of love, you will never know if your relationships are real or not. The only way to know that you're truly loved is if that love is unconditional, if it's non-transactional, because that's the only real love that there is. Real love is only unconditional love. Everything else is just self-serving. But the question that this raises is how would we know if we love anyone unconditionally? Because we love people who love us. We love the people who take care of us, who we give birth to in our families, our kids and our friends, and people who love us. We have great relationships. Those are the people that we love. And so how do we know what unconditional love would even be like? How would we even know what that would be like to experience? And it's so interesting that when he tells us about the nature of love, when he wants us to begin to understand the extent of the recklessness of God's love, of how unconditional and how non-transactional it is, he actually tells us, there is a way to love. Well, you will begin to understand God's love for you. He says there's actually a group of people that exist that when you love them, it can only be unconditional. There's a group of people that when you love them, it can never be transactional. When you love them, the cost-benefit analysis always comes up short. It's when you love your enemies. In Luke chapter 6, verse 27, Jesus says, "But I tell you, hear me, love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who mistreat you. If someone strikes you on one cheek, turn to him the other also. If someone takes your cloak, do not stop him from taking your tunic. Give to everyone who asks you. And if anyone takes what belongs to you, do not demand it back. Do to others as you would have them do to you." Now, unless you grew up in church and you've sort of been conditioned to think that this sounds sane, this sounds insane. I mean, Jesus, have you lost your mind? Like, are you listening to the words coming out of your mouth, Jesus? See, some of you are sort of nodding along going, oh yeah, praise God. So beautiful. No. So pay attention. Think about what he just said to do. He just said, love people who are hurting you, who are cursing you, who will give you nothing in return. They're not going to thank you for it. They're not be like, oh, wow, you were so great to me. I'm going to return in kind. No, this is a terrible life strategy for self-preservation. Like to love people like this is crazy. This is reckless. This is stupid. To love people like this, you are setting yourself up to be taken advantage of and to be hurt. See, this is as unconditional as love gets. There's nothing transactional about this. There's nothing fair. There's nothing reasonable. Instead of loving people who love you, Jesus says, love the people who hate you. Bless, do good, add value to people who curse you, who are opposed to you, and then pray for them. Right? Ask God to bless them. And just in case this sounds too abstract, he says, let me put this to you in concrete terms. He gives us a nice vivid description. He says, turn the other cheek, give people your clothes, let them take your possessions, instead of fighting for what's yours. Instead of fighting for your rights, he says, lay them down. Now, for the people Jesus is speaking to, having rights the way that we think of having rights isn't something, that's not part of their deal anyway, right? These are people who are living at a time and in a place where they are living under the oppressive rule of Rome. And so they are second-class citizens at best, even in their own country. But the people that he's speaking to, even among the Jewish populace, like these were not the elite, these were not the powerful, these are not the influential. These are the people who have no one to go to bat for them. So if somebody strikes them or steals from them or takes what's theirs or treats them unfairly or unjustly, takes advantage of them, they have no recourse. There's nothing they can do. There are no courts that are really going to stand up for them because that's where the powerful and elite, the people with influence, that's where they have the power. And so they're helpless. Right, this reality of being struck, of having your possessions taken, this is an everyday reality for them. Now imagine that if that's your reality, that if every day for you, you are subject or at least in danger of being treated unfairly, being treated unjustly, being taken advantage of, like wouldn't you want a little revenge? Wouldn't you want a little payback? And if you could get it, wouldn't you take it? And even if you couldn't, man, you'd want it. Right? You might dream about it. You might plot it. Even if you never took that first step, you might think about like, how could I get back at those people for what they did to me? Haven't you ever thought that? Or did you ever have those moments, those imaginary conversations with a person that you want to tell off? I don't know about you, I've never lost an argument in my head. You know, I'm just having these conversations and I come out looking good every time and I put them in their place. You ever have those conversations? Ever imagine like how you're going to get back at them for how they hurt you? And instead, Jesus says, do literally the opposite. Instead of taking revenge, even when you could get it, or just dreaming about how you would if you could, he says instead, do good to them. And he sums it up with the golden rule, do to others as you would have them do to you. Now, most of us have heard the golden rule probably more than once in our lives. And most of us probably have some version of it that we tend to live by. I mean, there's sort of a general sort of social agreement about how we treat other people. You treat other people the way you want them to treat you so that they'll do the same for you. And so what we do is we've actually taken the golden rule and sort of subconsciously, without realizing it, we just sort of added a phrase. And so what it says now is the way we sort of imagine it is treat other people, do to others how you would have them do to you so that they'll do the same for you. Do you see that? See, this is a reciprocal relationship. That's what we've just created. So I'm going to treat you the way I want to be treated so that you will treat me the way that I want to be treated. And this is pretty much accepted with how we do life. And by the way, there's worse ways. But this is what our parents teach us. This is what teachers teach us. This is what we teach our kids. That if you want people to be kind to you, be kind to them. You want people to be good to you, be good to them. And so we take this idea of do unto others as you would have them do unto you, and we add this phrase so that they will do the same for you. But in adding that phrase, what we do is we actually create kind of a qualifier. What if they don't? If they don't do for you what you want, what then? And what we rarely say out loud is that at that point, it's do unto others as you would have them do unto you, so that they will do the same for you unless they don't. And if they don't, all bets are off. Right? So be kind to other people unless they're mean to you. Love other people unless they're hateful to you. Do good to other people unless they curse you, unless they are against you, in which case they've broken that agreement. See, it was supposed to be reciprocal. They're not keeping their end of the bargain, so all bets are off, right? If they don't love you back, oh, you tried. See, what's so radical, what's so unreasonable, what's so reckless is that Jesus, he didn't add that line, right? That line doesn't exist. He says, do to others as you would have them do to you, period. There's no qualifier, there's no added phrase, there's no unless. In fact, the people that Jesus is talking about, the people we're supposed to love, these are people, it's not an unless they're mean to you. He says, no, they're the people who are already being mean to you. They're the people who are already cruel to you, who are cursing you, who hate you. He says, those are the people that you're supposed to treat with kindness and generosity and compassion and love. That's the person we're supposed to treat as though we were in their shoes, as though we're on the receiving end of what we're giving. I love watching football, and I don't get to watch as much of it as I like, which is probably good. But on Sundays, I love to turn on a game, and even if I don't have time to sit there and just watch the game, and I kind of get antsy, I'll just leave it on the TV. And then I go about my day and doing stuff, and every once in a while I just kind of walk through and I see what the score is. But I will stop if the team is about to score or go for a fourth down conversion, because those are like the pivotal moments, right? You know, they're either about to score, that's going to change things, or if they go for it on fourth down. I love fourth down conversions. I don't know, some of you are probably old enough, you remember, it used to be that no one ever went for it on fourth down. It was like the most crazy thing if it ever happened. But see, now we've got all these advanced metrics and win probability models, and so they tell coaches, oh, you should go for it. Even though it looks crazy, the probability model says you should go for it. I love it. I love that we get to see so many more fourth downs. It's so much more exciting than just another punt, another field goal. It's like, let's get risky, right? Let's see what happens. And I love that. You've watched the probability model and you say, let's go for it. It doesn't matter. It's probably going to work out. The odds are in our favor. But when it comes to loving your enemies, can I tell you, the win probability model says don't do it. It never works in your favor. Like statistically, doesn't even factor. To be kind to people who aren't kind to you, that is a losing strategy. To go for it in that instance, that is reckless, that is stupid. Unless you're playing a different game altogether. If you're playing not for what you can get, not for the kickback, not for what you can receive, but for what you can give. Because that's the only way to truly win. I love Jesus' follow-up rhetorical question. He brings this into focus. He says, if you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners love those who love them. See, Jesus is changing the game. He says, no, you thought the goal was to love people so they'll love you back. He says, no, listen, anybody can do that. Like, there's nothing remarkable about that. I'm not going for the ordinary. I'm going for the extraordinary. I'm not interested in this sort of run-of-the-mill love. Everybody loves like that. He says, no, I got bigger things in mind. And if you do good to those who are good to you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners do that. And if you lend to those from whom you expect repayment, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners, expecting to be repaid in full. Jesus says, I am not looking for the ordinary. I'm not looking for the common. He says, everybody loves like that. I'm looking for the extraordinary. I'm looking for the uncommon kind of love that loves enemies, loves people who are against you, loves people even when they curse you. He says, that is not a common love. That is an uncommon, extraordinary, reckless love. And that is the kind of love that makes the world sit up and take notice. And not just the world, by the way, but God. God takes notice when we love like that. Verse 35, but love your enemies, do good to them, and lend to them without expecting to get anything back, then your reward will be great and you will be sons of the Most High. Because he is kind to the ungrateful and wicked. Be merciful just as your Father is merciful. He says, when you love like that, God says, oh, you look like me. Oh, you look good right now. You look like me. See, to love people who love you, look, it's great. I'm all for it. It's a wonderful gift. I mean, it's one of the greatest gifts in your life is to find people who you do life with and they love you along the way. I love Carrie. She loves me. We're as happy as we can be, right? You know, I love my kids and they love me mostly. And I love friends, you know, and we love each other and we have got this, it's a great relationship. It's beautiful. It's a gift. It's worth preserving. It's worth fighting for. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing. Don't take it for granted. But there's nothing all that remarkable about it because this is what everybody does. Everybody who loves people who love them back. Everybody is good to people who are good to them back. But it is a great thing. But see, it's not always perfect either. Sometimes the people that you love the most, they turn on you. And suddenly, that I love this person and they love me back and it's so wonderful. Suddenly, you still have a choice how much you're going to love them because you feel like you're being attacked by them. See, I don't mean to shock you. Maybe this comes as a surprise to some of you, but you can have the most amazing, deepest relationship and still get blindsided. Because you thought everything was great until you discovered it wasn't and it was all your fault. And suddenly you find yourself on the wrong end of this conversation. You're going, wait a minute, I'm not your enemy, am I? Like, I didn't realize that we were against each other, but suddenly you find yourself in an uncomfortable space. Maybe it's with a friend, maybe it's with a spouse, maybe it's with a coworker who talks about you behind your back, and you're like, whoa, why are you against me? Like, I didn't even see this coming, and suddenly the whole dynamic of your relationship has changed. And see, when people treat you like you're their enemy, it becomes really easy to begin to see them as your enemy. And then you have a choice to make. You have a choice to make whether you're going to respond in kind, whether you're going to treat them as your enemy, whether you're going to throw it back in their face, whether you're going to get passive aggressive and make them pay, whether you're going to find some way to rat them out, or whether you're going to treat them the way that you would want to be treated if you were in their shoes, whether you're going to love them the way that you would want to be loved. And see, some of you, you're really good at navigating this. And some of you, you do this intuitively. As people turn on you, you diffuse those situations because you just understand in that moment, whether you think about it or not, that when you respond with compassion and with grace and with love, oftentimes that can turn the conversation. And you can hear how someone is attacking you, and you can stop in that moment instead of responding in kind, actually respond with love. And it changes the conversation because it changes the game. See, in that moment, it's not you against them. You're actually intentionally positioning yourself so that you're with them, for them. And that's what they were for all along, right? So now you're allies. You're not against them, you're for them. And in relationships that with people who are not normally your enemies, a good friend, a spouse, somebody you've known for a long time, and somehow things got crosswise, like when you respond that way, oftentimes that's enough just to turn the whole tide of the conversation. It's enough to snap them out of it. It's enough to remind both of you whose side you're really on, that you really do care about each other. Maybe not immediately and not always. But then there are people who they just keep coming after you. And they are relentless, they are against you, and they are not going to let it go. And in those moments, again, you have this choice to make. Are you going to respond in kind? Because here's the reality. Even if you respond with love, even if you respond to them with compassion and grace and goodness, it may not be enough to change their heart towards you. But it's still a win for you. Because it means that you're avoiding their fate. Because to hate people who hate you, to curse people who curse you, that is to imprison your soul right along with theirs. But when you love people, regardless of how they are treating you, that's when you're truly free. It's when your love is not limited by their love for you. When your love is not limited by their treatment of you, and you can still choose to love them, whatever they do. Whatever they've done to you, it's still your choice. You can still choose to love them. They cannot stop you. Only you can stop you. A few months ago, I gave a message on anger, and I challenged all of us to go and to have a conversation if we need to with people that maybe we've hurt in our anger, that we've lashed out to or against. And I was so moved by how many of you I heard from. How many of you went and had conversations, hard conversations, and you're willing to go and to apologize and to make things right. It was so amazing just to see how the Spirit was moving in so many of your lives. But something that sort of took me by surprise was how many people also told me that the person that they were most angry with, the person that they most resented and felt the most anger towards, and hate even towards, wasn't anyone that they knew personally. It was a politician on TV and the people that supported them. And see, our political discourse has gotten to this point where it's so ridiculous. And what the political parties sadly have discovered is that the two of the most powerful motivations to get us to vote is fear and hatred. And so they fuel this constantly, and we've come to this place now where half the country thinks the other half is the enemy, where half of us think the other half is out to get us, is against us, is trying to hurt us and harm us. And so listen, I'm not here to tell you that a particular politician isn't against you or that there are people who aren't against you. I'm not here to say that. What I am here to say is that what really matters is what you think of them. If you see them as your enemy, because then you have a choice to make. If you see them as your enemy, are you going to treat them as your enemy? Are you going to treat them in kind, or are you going to treat them the way that you would want to be treated if you were in their shoes? See, by the way, if you see people that way, odds are they see you in the same way. They see you as an enemy. They see you as a threat. And maybe that's shocking to you. Maybe it sounds ridiculous. Like, who could ever think that you're a threat? Who could ever think that you're the enemy? No, you're the innocent. You're the good people, of course. But see, that's because you've never experienced you the other way other people experience you. And maybe it's not you personally. Maybe it's a political affiliation. Maybe it's your family. Maybe it's your faith. Maybe it's your church. But if they see you as an enemy, how would you want them to treat you? And you can choose either to treat them in the same way, or you can choose to love them the way that you would want to be loved. One of the things that I found in life is that you will discover whatever you're looking for. You will find whatever you're looking for. If you go looking for enemies, then you're going to find enemies. But can I tell you how much better it is if you go into life not looking for enemies, but instead looking for people to love? It's so much better. There is beauty and goodness and grace that is waiting for you to discover when you go into the world with your arms open wide instead of with a clenched fist. When you go and you look to see people the way that God sees people, it opens up a whole new world for you. And you will discover so much more beauty and joy even within yourself when you see people that way. Don't look for enemies, look for people to love. Around the 2nd century BC, one of the early church fathers, his name was Clement. In one of his writings, he says this, and this is sort of my translation paraphrase. He says, "For when unbelievers hear us speak about God's revelations, they marvel at their beauty and greatness, but when they see that our actions are not worthy of what we've said, they conclude it's all nonsense and delusion. For when they hear from us that God said, 'It's no credit to you if you love those who love you, but instead love your enemies and those that hate you,' when they hear these things, they marvel at their exceeding goodness. But when they see we don't even love each other, they scoff at us, and Jesus' name is ridiculed." Jesus refused to allow people to be his enemies. Jesus refused to draw a line between the people who are for him and the people who are against him, and instead said, "I'm dying for all of you." And see, when we understand that about how Jesus has loved us, when we begin to understand that we are actually standing not apart from other people, us versus them, but that actually we are standing in solidarity with the whole world in desperate need of God's grace and God's love, when we begin to understand that this is how Jesus has loved us, then we can look at people, even as they're coming against us, and say, "But I'm not against you. And you can try to be our enemy, but we are not going to be your enemy." And there are people who will try to attack us, and we say, "You can try to attack us, but we're not going to attack you because we are not against you. We're not attacking you. We are for you. You are not our enemy. We're for you. We are for your good. We are for your blessing." And when you understand that and you see that politician on TV, or you see the person driving by with a bumper sticker that you don't agree with, understand in that moment that you have a choice to make, and you can either mutter under your breath how much you disdain their politics and how you don't like them and how they're an enemy, or you can say, "You are not my enemy. I refuse to see you as my enemy. I am for you. I am for your good. I am for your blessing. I am for your flourishing. I want what's good for you." See, they cannot be your enemy unless you allow them to be. And Jesus, when he came, he didn't come to conquer the world with military might and strength. He came to overwhelm us with love. And it hasn't changed. If we want God's love to reshape our politics, to reshape our nation, if we want God's love to reshape our communities and our businesses and our hospitals and our schools, it has to start with us. It's our brand. It's our brand. It's who we are. And in a world that is so desperate to pit us against each other and stir up animosity and hatred and division, it's when we love other people in a reckless and an unconditional in an unreasonable way, that's what makes us stand apart. It's when the world says, you got to hate everybody else. And we say, no, we refuse to see them as our enemies. We are for them. We will love them no matter what. When we do that, that's what makes us stand apart. And that's what makes the world sit up and take notice because it's so different. It's what love is meant to be. Unconditional, unreasonable, reckless. Because this is how God has loved us. It's the love we were made for. If you're here this morning, maybe you're not sure if God really loves you that way. Maybe you feel like God has been against you. Maybe God is your enemy. And I'm here to tell you that he is not against you. He is for you. And whatever you have experienced in your life, I want you to know he has never abandoned you. He has never given up on you. He is for you. He loves you more than you can possibly imagine. He is just waiting for you to come home, where you will find healing for your heart and wholeness for your soul. And maybe you're here and you have gotten caught up in the political climate of our day, and you feel that the hatred and the bitterness and the anxiety, and you've been carrying it for far too long. And I want you to know that you can let it go. You can lay it down. That he wants to bring healing and peace and joy to your heart, to your life. And if you don't know Jesus that way, if you don't know God that way, then I want you to know that right now you can step into that kind of relationship with him, a relationship that changes you from the inside, that gives you that kind of wholeness, that kind of peace, that kind of hope, that kind of comfort. That you don't have to react in fear and carry around hatred and bitterness. You can lay it all down, and he will meet you there. Jesus came, he stepped into our space. He became one of us, and he was surrounded by some people who loved him and then betrayed him. People who loved him and then gave up on him. People who loved him and abandoned him, and then by a whole bunch of other people who were absolutely his enemies, but he refused to treat them as such, and he came when we were his enemies. And he said, I'm giving my life for you. And it's in him that you can find the healing that you're looking for, the love that you were created for. And when you give your life to him, he gives you his life in return. It's the wholeness you've been and the love you've been looking for all of your life. If you want to take that step, you can pray with me right now. If you just bow your heads for a moment. Can I just ask everyone to bow your heads and close your eyes? And if you are already a follower of Jesus, would you just pray with me for those who have not yet made that decision? And if you're here right now and you just realize that you have come to the end of yourself, and you are tired of carrying around your baggage, you're tired of carrying around your regrets and shame, you're tired of carrying around anger and bitterness and hatred that you might have for whoever has hurt you in your life, right now you can surrender your life to Jesus, and he's already paid for all of it. It's already done. Right now you can pray, Jesus, I give you my life. Thank you that you died for me. Thank you that you have provided the forgiveness that I need and the hope for a future that I was made for. Jesus, I give you my life. Come into my life and make me whole. Jesus, I give you my life. And if you pray that prayer, I want to just welcome you into the family of God and ask you to come, and when we're done, you can come talk to one of us. We want to walk that journey with you. This isn't the end, it's truly just the beginning. Father, all of us, at different times, we get caught up because we're fearful people and we lose sight of you. And there's something inside of us that switches into fight or flight, and oftentimes with that comes anger and hatred and bitterness towards those who've hurt us. But the reality is that we have all that we need in you. And that when we were your enemies, you loved us more than we can possibly imagine. So, Lord, I pray that as we consider the people in our lives who've hurt us, the people who have set themselves up as our enemies, who have lashed out against us, who are against us, who keep coming at us. Maybe it's at work, maybe it's at home, Lord, that we would see them as you have seen us, people to love. Lord, give us such a profound confidence in you that we could leave this place and we could step into the world with love and hope and grace. That we could say to the people who fight against us, we are not against you, we're for you because God is for you. Lord, help us to love you and love others the way that you've made us. Pray this in your name. Amen.